Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. So a couple of days ago I put out a video that showed a movie from every year that I have in my collection, and this was in response to a challenge that had been put out by John at PladX2. So please do go and check my previous video, also check out John's challenge video, and also have a look at some of the people that have already made videos since John put that challenge out. And those videos include Cine Art Therapy, Grey Mike 1951, and Cinema Inspired. All of those are great channels. Now, in my previous video, I mentioned that I was missing a movie from 1924. But I hadn't been thinking about my Criterion collection when I said that, and I do actually have this 100 years of Olympic films. So yes, I can get to 1924 by looking at the Olympic Games held at Chamonix in 1924. So there you go, that's my 1924 choice. And in fact, if I want to go back even further, then I have this one, which is from 1912, and this is the Games of the V Olympiad in Stockholm. But enough of that. What I really want to talk about in this video is just going back to this laserdisc here, which I showed before. This is the Landmarks of Early Film, and this is a compilation of all various types of short films going right back to the origins of cinema back in 1885. So for people who are unfamiliar with where it all began, I just want to give a brief rundown. You can find a lot of these things on YouTube, so don't worry about not having this particular disc. You can just search for things on YouTube and go from there. But where did it all begin then? So back in 1872, a gentleman, Eadweard Muybridge, he was tasked with trying to find out scientifically whether or not horses' hooves all leave the ground at the same time when racing. So to do this, he set up a series of cameras around a racetrack and had them timed to go off at intervals, and then was able to demonstrate that yes, horses' hooves do leave the ground. And then also he could put these images together to give that sense of movement of a horse moving around the racetrack. So that's really where it all started. So yeah, 1872 was when he was tasked with this, and around 1881 is when he developed what's called a zoopraxiscope so that he could show the images. So yeah, that's really the starting point. So Eadweard Muybridge, you can look up some more of his photographs. He did do a lot of photographs of women in the nude in doing various tasks and functions, just to kind of give a sense of style and motion and things like that. So those were in his early photographs. Then moving on to about 1894, 1896, we have Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulb, and he gets involved in inventing what's called a kinetoscope. Now, these early kinetoscope films, they were static film shots, but they could show movement. And so he captured things such as a strong man showing his muscles, a cockfight, two baby children quarreling, and a kiss. So yeah, these were really early examples of movement. And then in 1895, Auguste and Louis Lumière, they developed the cinematograph. So this was a device that was able to shoot film. It could capture the film, project it as well. So this was a real leap forward. And above all, it was portable as well. So they could take it out onto the streets and start filming different subjects. So their earliest film known is one that's people leaving a factory. Now that might not sound exciting in itself, but it really is fascinating to go back all those years and just see what life was like, and see the opening of the doors of a factory and all these people leaving for the end of their working day. And they were able to record various other kind of happenings that were going on outdoors, various subjects randomly that include things like a lion keeper rather cruelly taunting and feeding a lion in its cage, a parade of ostriches, a baby having lunch, an arrival of a train, a poultry yard, things of that kind of nature. So lots of very random kind of just happenings, but all fascinating at the time for anyone who had not been able to see these kinds of things on film. And this kind of true life happening continued in 1897 and onwards, where there would be more people taking part in doing these kinds of documentary type filming. So there's a really fascinating one of the aftermath of an earthquake in San Francisco in 1906. President McKinley seen at home in 1897. Skyscrapers of New York as seen from the North River. And there's one I particularly like, which involves a dog assisting a milkman do his rounds. And back in this time, the dog would be sort of tied up to a little cart that had a milk churn on it, and the dog would walk along, the milkman would go to people's houses, and then people would sort of hold out their jugs, and the milkman would then just ladle in some milk into their jugs. Really fascinating kind of stuff to see. But really, when it gets to fictional film, where things get really, really interesting is around about 1902, 1903. And Georges Méliès, his very famous A Trip to the Moon. Now, Georges Méliès had been making some films before A Trip to the Moon, but A Trip to the Moon really is the landmark film that is considered so influential, and it really is incredible to watch it. Now, the interesting thing actually when I watched it on this laserdisc is that it does actually have a narration with it, and so the fascinating thing is that although obviously the film was made before sound happened, it was actually distributed with a narrative for people to read out when the film was being shown. So yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Otherwise, you're just looking at some silent images, and some of it can be a bit confusing because you've just got a lot of gesticulating going on and shouting, and you're not quite sure what's going on from there. So yeah, having a narration actually helps. But the really great thing with A Trip to the Moon is it's just so incredibly inventive. Georges Méliès was building these incredible sets that he would use. So again, the camera is still static at this point. You're not really moving the camera around much, but it's what he was able to then really imagine in front of the camera that was so incredible. So like I say, building these sets, working out how to do some sort of crude special effects, if you like. He was a magician, and so he would do these kind of explosions and transitions on the screen as well. So really, really creative and inventive stuff. And A Trip to the Moon absolutely is a film that you must watch if you have not already seen it. And you can find it on YouTube. You can find it in many different formats. And then the other film that really needs significant mention from 1903, and it's The Great Train Robbery. So again, the film camera at this point is still static. It's still not moving. But it's, again, what is able to happen in front of the camera that is really important, and the sense of actually building a story. So this was actually 14 scenes. A lot of the scenes are done just in interior sets, which are meant to be indicative of a train movement. This is a Western, if you like, the first Western that gives a story about a train robbery. So yes, we haven't actually got a moving train, although the film does cut away to show a moving train, but the actual filming inside the interior of the train is just a set. But we get this sense of movement because it's one of the first films that shows rear projection. So we're looking through a sort of window of the train and getting this sense of movement. So that's a really, really major turning point in terms of film. And iconically, it ends with this amazing shot, which really is a shot because we have the cowboy here who is looking straight to the camera, and he fires his gun, and you, the audience, are getting that. So this really was an interaction with the audience. The first, all the films that really had come before, the viewer is exactly that. They're a viewer, they're an observer, and now they're a participant in film. And that really was a majorly influential moment, this sort of relationship between the camera and the viewer. Many filmmakers have used that. I mean, for example, Joe Pesci firing at the camera in Goodfellas. And just look, today is August 28th, 2023, and the poster has just been revealed for David Fincher's new film. So just look at this poster for a second, and you can see the influence still carries on. Okay, so that's just a brief kind of rundown. I'm in no way an expert on the history of cinema at all, but I just wanted to sort of kind of run through some of the things that are on that Laserdisc set, put it into some kind of little order there, and then invite you to just, do your own research if you have not already looked into this. I'm sure some of you are very scholarly and already know the history of film a lot better than I can put into words. But yeah, that just sort of gives a few touch points there. So Eadweard Muybridge, the photographer, Thomas Edison, the Lumière brothers, then Georges Méliès and the Great Train Robbery. These are really all key moments in cinema. And yeah, we all carry on enjoying films 120 or so years later. So isn't that great? All right. That's enough from me. I'll see you again, hopefully, on some more videos. Thanks very much for joining me on this one. All the best to you. Bye-bye.